Hey, everybody, welcome. I'm Natalie, and this is Scientology Life After a Cult, where we talk a lot about Scientology and culty things. And today, boy, do we have a topic. You guys, I was going to go live later. I had kind of a different plan. And then after last night, I'm like, oh, I even thought I was going to sleep in. I couldn't sleep. I woke up my regular time, even without an alarm, because I was like, we got to talk about this. We're going to be talking about how Aaron Smith-Levin at Growing Up in Scientology dropped a video last night with some serious information having to do with paying off Zero Dark Tony and others to harass and harm people in the former Scientology community, as well as people live streaming and protesting Scientology. Thank you, moderators, for being here, especially today. I appreciate it. You guys taking the time. Everybody in the live chat, welcome. Hit that like on your way in. Check your subscribe, and then check the subscribe of your neighbors. Help each other. Thank you, members, for being here. I don't know how many of you had a chance to see this video yet. And if you don't know, Zero Dark Tony is someone who has been here on YouTube, and for some reason, for quite some time, as I understand it, has been harassing former Scientologists, people live streaming, protesting, got into a whole online beef with an underage streamer, Solomon, many of you know. And now there's an arrest warrant out for him. There's been multiple violations of restraining orders by Zero Dark Tony in regard to Solomon, who is a minor. And now, this news is out that it does appear that Scientology has been giving envelopes of cash to Zero Dark Tony so that he may go ahead and harass former members and people protesting and live streaming Scientology. So we're going to take a look at multiple pieces of the video from Growing Up in Scientology and break it down, get your thoughts on it. I just seriously can't wait to talk to you guys about this. Like I said, I was going to sleep in today, and I was like, boom, waking up at my regular time. Chantel, good morning. Just a Northern Girl says, I saw it. Aaron was positively giddy. I love it when he gets giddy. It's hilarious. It's very contagious. Okay, so let's jump into this here. Try to, as we go along, if you guys have questions or comments, if you could put question or comment in front of it, and we'll try and keep an eye on those. Nancy, if you see any, if you could help me star some, we'll keep an eye. That way I can keep going, and we can throw in some questions and stuff as we go as well. So, hey, John Lee, welcome. Let's look at the first piece here, which is basically Aaron Smith-Levin at Growing Up in Scientology sharing let's put it this way. Scientology has more leaks than the Titanic. You know what I'm saying? It's like you cannot just plug them all. And Scientology is really good at one very particular thing. I don't know if you guys can guess what that is. Scientology has mastered this. They've been doing it since day one. And you know what they're really, really good at? What Scientology and all of its entities under the direction of L. Ron Hubbard, now David Miscavige, multiple Scientology executives over the years, what they're really good at is making enemies, is creating upset with people who then want to whistleblow on them and expose. Because why? Because what they're doing are activities that a cult would do, that violate human rights, that violate basic human decency. That's why so many of you are here, because many of you never in Scientology, but all in on ending this cult, have learned about this through the stories of so many people who have left Scientology and come forward to talk about it, share their stories, try and find some healing. And many of you who are here and who are watching this video have witnessed this. I've been around for a year here on YouTube, and I've seen a lot of stories, a lot of healing, but I've also seen the way, and I've heard from others, because I've not watched a ton of his content, Zero Dark Tony, the levels that he has gone to harass former members and protesters and live streamers. We have also seen, hey, Marilyn Honig, good to see you. We've also seen how there have been some interesting characters popping up with the protests of the last year, little over a year. those of you who've been around for a while might remember Confident Chris. Confident Chris had been out at the Blue Buildings in Los Angeles, the Hollywood Testing Center, and there was an incident where someone who appeared to be unhoused beat him up. Ambulance had to come. It was a major traumatic experience for Confident Chris. Just within just the couple minute walk, he had to go from Big Blue to his car. Back then, many of us did not really think that was a coincidence, like what's happening. But the dots weren't all put together, and now they have been, with Zero Dark Tony and potentially others who have been being paid cash envelopes by Scientology in a very tricky way. And that's what we're going to look at. So let's take a look here at the first clip here from Growing Up in Scientology. Let's start here.
One of my most trusted sources, who has been an unbelievably reliable source of information about insider activities at Talent Executive Services, the guys who provide private security for David Miscavige in Scientology, has been an unbelievable insider source for information at PAC Security. That's the Sea Org security unit located on L. Ron Hubbard Way. And an inside source of information relating to other things that actually sort of blow my mind, has informed me that Zero Dark Tony is paid, and this is going to sound crazy, but I'm going to back it up a little bit with other examples, is paid every month with cash in an envelope by this guy right here, Eaton Kellender, Director of Development at Citizens Commission on Human Rights International. One of my most...
Now that just there, this information is there is a history of Scientology doing this, going to the homes of a couple of trusted, wealthy Scientologists to get the cash, to then, through the Citizens Commission on Human Rights, and we're going to talk more about that, pay people like Zero Dark Tony and others to continue their attacks online and in person against former Scientologists and people live streaming and protesting Scientology. That is just, like I said, we've talked about this for a long time. We've seen so many shenanigans over the last year. And let's be honest, going back decades with Scientology, even with the anonymous protests. And that's where this all starts to come together. There are a couple key players here involved in this. One of them is a Scientologist and a private investigator named Russ Andrews. Russ Andrews happens to be married to the head of the Citizens Commission on Human Rights International, Fran Andrews. The Citizens Commission on Human Rights is known to Scientologists, and really it's how they put themselves out to the world, as a group that fights the evils of psychiatry, that they basically are trying to end psychiatry, the abuses within psychiatry and psychiatry itself. And they've been around for quite some time. And there has been some information coming out behind the scenes over some years about these activities. And so there's this long track record going back to beyond the anonymous protest days, which was what, 2008, 9, 10, around that time, even going back further. But where this guy comes into play, Russ Andrews, was a private investigator in Los Angeles. He was sent by Scientology to Seattle to follow certain anonymous protesters to find out about them, because that's what Scientology does. They want to know who you are so they can figure out how to harass and stop you. It backfires way more than it ever works, but they continue. Scientology continues to do this. Why? Because they have to do what L. Ron Hubbard said to do, which is to attack, to do a noisy investigation, to find out what their crimes are. So you have a private investigator who is also indoctrinated in Scientology, which in my personal opinion, that's kind of like a double whammy. You know what I'm saying? You're already a private investigator, but you're a Scientologist too. So you're really indoctrinated, and you've been doing this dirty trick stuff for quite some time. I don't know how you sleep at night. You really either are just a complete psychopath, or you have convinced yourself that physically harming people and contributing to it is okay. But we know that because many who work with the Office of Special Affairs or the Citizens Commission on Human Rights in doing these things, that's how they operate. Because why? Why? Because L. Ron Hubbard said, oh, it's okay. It's okay to do that. Let's talk about this. L. Ron Hubbard, Scientology has got like these winter wonderlands, right, in Kansas City, which is just dead, Los Angeles, Hollywood, which is dead, and have posted L. Ron Hubbard quotes, the day when we can fully trust each other, there will be peace on earth. Meanwhile, these psychos are running around with envelopes of cash, paying people to harass people who are blowing the whistle on Scientology, who are exposing it, who are out there bringing it to the attention of many people through live streaming and through protesting Scientology. So this connection, it's like it's tight. So the Citizens Commission on Human Rights, they do the psychiatry and industry of death. It's an exhibit that they use that travels around the world. They have a location in Hollywood. We've seen it before. I've seen Dan Walks LA out there multiple times in front of the Citizens Commission on Human Rights and others live streaming and protesting as well. So let's watch this next clip, which gets a bit more into the insidiousness of how the Citizens Commission on Human Rights, how this works.
CCHR, Citizens Commission of Human Rights, is a Scientology front group, mostly known for being an anti-psychiatry front group. But it has another purpose. It has another purpose. It is the real dark money and funder of black bag operations in Scientology, because it is legally one step removed from Scientology. Scientologists are under the impression that the IAS, the International Association of Scientologists, is actually the war chest for Scientology. And that is not true. That is just what they want you to think because it's very sexy and they can promote it. The real war chest, the real war is fought in the dark. And the IAS only wants you to know about things that they want to do press releases about. They don't want you to know about the dark, dirty, illegal stuff that they're doing. CCHR, Citizens Commission.
And why would they? Of course, right? They do let some Scientologists know, mainly the ones being brought into the confidential briefing. And I've told you guys, if you hear a confidential briefing in Scientology, hide your kids, hide your wives, hide your wallet, because they're coming for it. That means money. We're going to tell you this clandestine operation of our paranoia as we fight our perceived enemies, what we're doing and how you can help with envelopes of cash. The Citizens Commission on Human Rights has always been known to Scientologists as a group. It is a front group for Scientology battling psychiatry. What Scientologists don't know, and really it's only with this breaking news coming out, it's becoming more apparent that the Citizens Commission on Human Rights is actually the organization that is carrying out these dirty tricks. They're getting the money. They're delivering the money. They do this through, you can have lawyers who hire private investigators, who hire the unhoused or people who are unstable to get them to go cause trouble. They really work hard to make sure there's no way to link it back to Scientology. But there is no way to link it back because it is Scientology doing it. So over time in the last year, there's been more and more things coming out. And this is what Aaron's laying out in this video with some most recent revelations by one of his sources that show, yeah, here's the person delivering the money. Here's how often it's done. Here's how this works. And that is very shocking, especially probably mostly for if there happens to be any under the radar Scientologists watching or even former Scientologists. Because even though many of us are like, yeah, Citizens Commission on Human Rights, they're trying to end valid forms of mental health. Why would we support that? And now you add to it, there's a whole nother piece to it that they've been secretly the ones carrying out these shenanigans. It is a lot, you guys. It is a lot to process. So let's continue to process here. Let's look at another clip getting into how private investigator Russ Andrews and what his role is in doing Scientology's dirty tricks. Remember, he is also a Scientologist.
This Saturday, we revealed the appearance of one of Scientology's notorious black bag department operators, a private investigator named Russ Andrews. Now we've heard from a source that says one of Andrews' many operations was to spy on members of Anonymous in Seattle, to track them down and identify them for the Church of Scientology. Isn't it interesting that a PI and a Scientologist based in Los Angeles was deployed specifically to Seattle, showing that Russ Andrews really is the go-to guy for this kind of stuff?
That made a lot of sense to me, because if you guys remember, the anonymous protests, when they were happening all over the place, and made me think like, okay, why Seattle? They were happening in the Twin Cities, New York, I mean, everywhere. But Scientology takes their asset, who has direct close ties through his wife, who heads the Citizens Commission on Human Rights International, who also happens to be a private investigator and a Scientologist. And that's the guy they send to Seattle to follow anonymous protesters to find out who they are so that Scientology can harass them. I think this recent round of protests, one of the reasons it's successful in making an impact and getting the word out there, and it's a different time, right? It's a different time than things were in the environment with Scientology. It's different today in that Scientology is much weaker in what they actually can do, but they still obviously are busy doing a lot. There's also power in showing your face, because that is something that's leverage that Scientology has had over anonymous protesters in the past, and now people who don't want to be identified. And there is nothing wrong with that. If you don't want to be identified, you have a right to not be identified, even when you're protesting Scientology. But what that does is it gives them a bit more leverage, because what Scientology does is they want to find out what you value. And if you're not sharing your name and your identity, they're going to go, okay, this person values their privacy. They value these things not being known. And if you're making enough of an impact, they're going to find out who you are and try to stop you from doing what you're doing. And so many today, people live streaming, protesting Scientology, and former members, you know our names. You know who we are. It is no secret. Most of us are doing this in our real names. So they can't, what are they going to do? Say, oh, Natalie Webster is on the internet throwing shade to Scientology and sharing her experience, and she's such a suppressive person. Okay. All they can really do is try to discredit people who are sharing their stories, who are connecting with all of you, who are trying to build community. That is a huge thing that Scientology does not like, because when we come together and we start building community and we start showing up for each other and supporting each other, they don't like that. They want the opposite to happen. So they have multiple ways that they try to do this. And this whole operation is an example of one of those. Shelley, exactly. True evil hides in plain sight. That's exactly right. Becky says, I wonder how much money Zero Dark Tony is getting for me. He owes me half. Jersey Jan, Cult of Scientology has more leaks than the Titanic. I love it. Hopefully it's not too soon it's been a long time, right? Yeah, it has. We can make Titanic jokes now, right? I am. George Massey says, you can bet that Patrick Perry was paid. And Patrick Perry, of course, is the man who had the vicious dog. Actually, I take that back. I don't think the man who was training the dog and using the dog, manipulating the dog into being vicious and attack protesters. I think that's more accurate. I think the dog is a victim of Patrick Perry. Patrick Perry is also the person who got into an altercation and hit Aaron Smith-Levin, literally assaulted him, and then they both got taken by the police. Took forever. I'm sure you guys remember that when that happened. It was quite the ordeal. So I think you could very well be right, because he definitely seemed to be a friend to Scientology. Let's see, Cubana Chica, I remember you saying once that Scientology wanted you to follow and get license plates numbers. Yes, in the Twin Cities. I was already leaving Scientology. I had decided, but I had a 2-year, what ended up taking me 2 years to execute a plan to get as many members of my family out as possible, and I left with 3 generations of my family. So in the process of while I was still there, I remember the director of special affairs, which is the local OSA representative, if you will, Office of Special Affairs person there, who's not a Sea Org member, who's a regular staff member, asked me to follow some of the protesters and get their license numbers for exactly this. And I didn't. I just, no. I forget how I handled it because I had to be careful. Because if he got wind that I was what they call disaffected and word got out, they would have shipped my daughter anywhere. My daughter Shelby was in Florida and she's the one I was trying to get back. But needless to say, it definitely creeped me out like, huh. And they would ask people like me to do things like that because I was in the Sea organization. And there's a level, it's actually really interesting because former members of the Sea organization, per L. Ron Hubbard, are degraded beings. If you leave the Sea organization, you are a degraded being, which is just what it sounds like, a being who is degraded. And, that's what L. Ron Hubbard always pushed, of course, because you have to position leaving with being an a-hole and a degraded being. And who wants to be a degraded being? The positioning and manipulation, which just that one thing really tells you how culty Scientology is. So you're a degraded being if you leave. At the same time, Scientology likes to still keep us former Sea Org members around when we're public Scientologists to call upon to do things like, hey, can you go follow these people and get their license plates? Oh, let's go ask the degraded beings to do it. So it is interesting. It's almost like two opposing views in a way with Scientology when it comes to former Sea Org. On one hand, you're a degraded being. On the other hand, we feel like we can trust you on account of you having been brainwashed and indoctrinated in the Sea Org, that we hope we can push a button and that same training and reaction will kick in and the mind control will kick in. It didn't. I was out for quite a bit of time by the time they asked me to do that. Great Gig in the Sky is saying, and his kids are all in the Sea Org. So I'm assuming you're talking about Russ there. Interesting. That is very interesting. Okay, let's go now and look at, actually, you know what? Let's finish this clip that we're on. Let's finish this up.
I just thought that was interesting. Okay. We have a document that our source says was produced by Russ Andrews during the operation, and it demonstrates what members of Anonymous always suspected, that Scientology watched them obsessively in order to ID them for harassment.
Yes, and in Seattle. Now, here's a theory I have on this. This is just a theory. I could be wrong because I've been wondering, like, why was he sent out to Seattle? Why was he sent out to Seattle? Seattle does have a director of special affairs. If she's still there, her name's Ann Pierce. She's married to Steve Pierce. They were very involved in trying to dox the anonymous protesters. Was it because it's like they already had people there? Many Scientology organizations don't have a director of special affairs. So was that why? I don't know. But there are a couple locations where Scientology has these directors of special affairs who are not Sea Org members. They're staff members that have a contract with that organization, 2.5 or 5 year staff contract. But their job is basically to kind of operate independently from the organization to do public relations, to try and get out the works of L. Ron Hubbard, to get positive press, but they're also there to manage the negative and people who are exposing Scientology and report on that up to the Office of Special Affairs. So that is how that works there. Just a Northern Girl says, I don't doubt that 99.9% of the aggressive behavior towards protesters was payrolled by the cult of Scientology, be it by members or non-members. There is no low they won't go. Yeah, absolutely. And keep this all in mind too. When you find yourself online or in different chats or anywhere really on the internet and you see someone or someone's, there are certain things that they repeat that are what Scientology calls enemy lines. And they're used to discredit somebody exposing Scientology. And it could be a former member. It could be somebody protesting. It could be somebody here on YouTube. And you kind of get good at spotting the enemy lines being pushed by Scientology themselves, because some of them are just outrageous. But what happens is people who are not necessarily operatives of Scientology, who are maybe just regular trolls, will pick up on that. And then they'll repeat it. And that's the whole operation. That is the whole idea. Get this out, get somebody else repeating it as truth when it's not. It's all done to try and create a situation where there's conflict, where people are no longer working together to expose Scientology. There are so many different pieces when it comes to exposing Scientology, and they're all valid. You could be protesting, you could be here watching, liking videos, sharing them. You could be calling in to different organizations like they're doing in LA to get the word out to city officials about the way that Scientology is violating ADA rules like Audit LA is doing, collecting, gathering information and sharing it like Fat Grammy. So many people are doing so many different things. People are protesting Scientology all over the world. It's all valid. It all helps. Thank you to everybody who's doing that. There's no reason why anyone needs to say, well, these people over here aren't doing it right, or these people over here aren't doing it right. They will. They probably will. They have. But all of it all contributes to exposing Scientology. And people have their own different ways of doing that. And so part of this whole operation does involve going in and trying to further these rifts. And I've seen it myself. I don't get into chats too much because I'm usually listening to a video more than I'm watching it. But sometimes I do, and I see things that I'm like, oh my gosh, that is the funniest things I've ever seen, especially when it's about me saying something I absolutely didn't say or that is absolutely not true. That's part of the game. That will always be happening. There will always be stuff like that floating around about me or other people, because we're talking about a human trafficking cult. And especially for people where, like, we grew up in it, we came from it, we know. As much as Scientology wants to say, oh, that's not true, it never happened. I'm sorry, you got a lot of people sharing very similar stories and experiences to know that it is. And y'all, Scientology running around doing things like this, where you're using the Citizens Commission on Human Rights to carry envelopes of cash to Zero Dark Tony and others to harass former members and people live streaming and protesting Scientology. They'll continue to do it. They will try to find other ways. So let's take a look now at a clip. This one talks about how private investigator Russ Andrews would get the envelopes of cash from wealthy Scientologists. Listen to this.
Russ Andrews is someone who is known by members of wealthy Scientology families to make the phone call late at night saying they were going to be coming over for the minimum $5,000 of cash in an envelope, and openly bragged about the fact that no, in CCHR is where we get to do the real stuff because we don't have to play by the rules.
That is such a key point. Now, the Citizens Commission on Human Rights is run by Scientology, but it exists separate from, which is why I think Scientology thinks, oh, this is a good idea. Let's use the Citizens Commission on Human Rights on this. Also, many did not see that coming because they have this whole front of, no, we're here to end psychiatry. And now when you take the head of the Citizens Commission on Human Rights being married to this Scientologist private investigator who's done these dirty tricks in the past, it all comes together and makes sense that this is Scientology doing what they've always done. They fair game people, because L. Ron Hubbard said it's fair game. If somebody is a suppressive and attacking Scientology, do what you want. Doesn't matter if it's illegal, doesn't mean if anybody gets hurt. It's fair game. You will not get in trouble in Scientology for doing it if you're a Scientologist. It's so insidious and gross. It really is. Constance June, exactly. And we had Rocket Joey, whose legal admitted Scientology paid his legal bills. Exactly. Rocket Joey Rocket, was following Scientology Audit Street's LA around and claiming that Scientology Audit Street's LA William Good was following him. It was crazy. Tried to get him on elder abuse, that William was elder abusing him. Didn't work, got kicked out. But in the process of all that, it came out that Scientology was paying his legal bills. Why would Scientology pay the legal bills of some random dude who is in a beef with Scientology Audit Streets LA, William Good? Because that's what they do. That's what they do. Let's see. Phil says Scientology is still deep in California administration. Ken Tassel is active staff, also privacy officer for Sonoma County and passed for other counties. He was out of Glendale in 78 where my parents worked and had me. Interesting. So where is Ken Tassel on staff? I'm curious. Nisa, isn't it true that the LAPD is getting their share to include the Chicago PD as well? How many more people are getting paid off in these cases? Because this is not normal behavior. You are right. This is not normal behavior. How many? I don't know. It makes sense to me that there would be a tie between the two, that Chicago and LAPD would be, or at least Scientology would be sharing information between the two, or a private investigator or lawyers. But I can't say like, oh, here's a receipt on that. But it would make sense. And based off their history and everything they've always done, I mean, I really feel like that would be the case. Yes. P. Taylor, thank you so much for the super sticker. Good morning, Natalie from the West Coast. Love what you do. I appreciate that. Thank you, P. Taylor. Let's see. Okay, so Cece. Danny found Wendell was camping out inside the old ATA lot. So some months ago, when let's see, what was happening then? Was that during the occupation? Wendell, an unhoused man, showed up and spread out all his stuff and was harassing people who were live streaming and protesting Scientology. I think he even followed Becky. And then Danny, I think it was Danny, right? Danny, who got footage of all of Wendell's stuff behind Scientology's gates. So I don't think it's a stretch to say Wendell as well as somebody who was probably paid by Scientology to harass people. Think of the last year and how many times some wackadoodle shows up, tries to spits on Scientology Audit Streets LA, tries to get people into altercations. There's no way in my mind, it is in my opinion, that they're paid by Scientology. Why else would you do it? David Bruce says the Citizens Commission on Human Rights is absolutely antithetical of what their title is. Reminds me of government agencies and projects that do exactly the opposite of what they infer, like Federal Reserve. Interesting point, David. I totally get what you're saying. Joe Buchanan, think it was Chris that saw everything. Confident Chris? Yeah, he saw a lot. And look what happened. Rika, good morning and happy holidays to you as well. Yep. Just a Northern Girl. Let's not forget Brian Borland, the tweaker in front of the test center, and the Russian Sea Org member who spit on streets. Exactly. Yes. Brian Borland, in the early days of the Hollywood Testing Center, showed up and just lost his mind in front of the testing center, was incredibly aggressive, hateful, engaged in outright hate speech, trying to intimidate people into stop protesting Scientology. And it didn't work. It didn't work. It did not. Okay, let's finish this clip here.
Oh my God. If Scientologists only know, if Scientologists only knew, because broadly speaking, Scientologists do not know that's what CCHR does. When I say Russ Andrews showing up to the door of wealthy Scientology families, it's one of these things where it's like they're the ones being let in to the secret, the inside secret, that this is how it really works. This is where the excitement really happens. Russ Andrews is someone who is known by members of wealthy Scientology families to make the phone call late at night saying they were going to be coming over
to get that money. Get the cash ready. I wonder what kind of envelopes they use. Was it a small regular envelope? Does it go in a big envelope? How do you do this when you're getting cash together to harass people and cause bodily harm in some situations. What does that look like? How big is the envelope? Scientology, really tell us. Okay, now let's look at how more information on how the Citizens Commission on Human Rights is directly funding infiltrators going after protesters, SPTV, former members, etc. This is, hold on, let me make sure I got this pulled up here. This is a doozy.
The fact that I have direct, unconfirmed information that CCHR directly is funding the infiltrators and agent provocateurs going after protesters and SPTV. Plus, you already have existing evidence that CCHR's president and director, Fran Andrews, that her husband was directly involved in the exact same activities years earlier with Anonymous. I'm telling you guys, CCHR, the Psychiatry Industry of Death Museum on Sunset Boulevard, needs to get some attention. That's all I'm saying.
It's right out there too on Hollywood Boulevard. That's a great idea if anybody's out there and would like to go visit. It just gets worse for Scientology because not only does Russ Anderson, the Scientologist private investigator, married to the head of the Citizens Commission on Human Rights International, right? Done what he done, doing what he's doing. But Scientology had protesters followed during the anonymous protests. And that's also how Danny Masterson's defense team discovered who the jurors were. So there's a theme here. Scientology is kind of a one-trick pony when it comes to some of these dirty tricks, right? They know one move, one dance. They get out on the dance floor and there's just one thing that they can do. And that's harass, and that's fair game, and be dirty about it. Not ever just take a moment for some quiet reflection to ask themselves, wow, if there's more former Scientologists than current Scientologists, and more former Sea Org members than current Sea Org members, and so many people talking crap about Scientology, could it be something we're doing? No, never occurs to them. If the shoe was on the other foot, if it was a Scientologist, they'd be like, what did you do to pull this in? You must have done something. What did you do to pull this in? If you find yourself being a victim in Scientology, what did you do to pull it in? That's what they say. A lot of victim shaming going on. Yet they somehow don't seem to see that about themselves, which I find to be very interesting. Mary James says, one of the best things I learned from Tori, and that's Tori Magoo 44 here on YouTube, and Mark, which is Mark Bunker here on YouTube, Xenu TV. Xenu TV is Mark Bunker's channel, was to not fall for the tricks Cult of Scientology does. It is literally obvious to see sometimes. Exactly. Don't take the bait. The bait's either going to be they're coming directly at you or they're going, let me tell you something about Natalie or whoever it is. Insert name, right? If that person is talking about and exposing Scientology, they got something to say about it. They do. And it does get very obvious because some of the things are so insane. It's like, come on, at least keep it within the realm of truth so there could be some believability there. But they don't always hit the mark. Sometimes the Office of Special Affairs and Scientology dirty tricks, they do hit the mark in their dirty tricks. But you know what? Even a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while. So that is probably how that works. Otherwise, I mean, they don't. Especially now, I think more and more people are coming to understand and recognize and consider the source when somebody comes with information. I get so many crazy emails that are really basically aimed at trying to get me to get into beefs with people. It's juvenile. I'm like, y'all, Scientology, I am a 54-year-old woman, okay? I am living my life. I'm doing my thing. Y'all can have your shenanigans. And living my life, doing my things involves showing up almost every day and talking and exposing Scientology and having fun with it. So there is that. They're always going to have something to say, I guess is what I'm saying. Ms. Withholdy, it's amazing what lengths the cult of Scientology will go to try and get their way. It truly is. They are just like spoiled little kids who think they have a right to do all of these things because a cult leader named L. Ron Hubbard, who was once in a sex cult, trying to bring about the Antichrist with Jack Parsons and Aleister Crowley, because that man decided, that's your source, that's what you should do. Afila says, when did you find out Scientology does these harassment crimes to hurt people? How did it feel as a former member? Oh, that's a great question. I suspect most Scientologists would be shocked of the truth. 100%. Most Scientologists do not know that Scientology does this. They really don't. They're told at their propaganda events that, that they're fighting the psychs. That's a big one. The enemies of Scientology. It's always in very, very general terms. Very general terms. So when I first found out, when did you find out Scientology does these harassments and crimes? After I left Scientology. What's interesting about that question is there were things I was aware of in Scientology, but I didn't see it as harassment. I didn't understand it to be that way because I was indoctrinated to believe that if you're an enemy of the church, that of course Scientology is going to defend itself. That's more how I saw it because that was part of my indoctrination. After leaving Scientology, I was like, holy crap. No, that's wrong. It's an organization, a supposed church that goes after people for having a different opinion, for sharing their experience. If it's not true and it didn't happen, why are your panties always in a bunch about it, Scientology? Why? Because it's true. And you know it. You know it. We've seen leaked Office of Special Affairs documents written by Mike Rinder sharing with David Miscavige that the media was saying he beats his staff, while David Miscavige was literally beating Mike Rinder. So they know, but many people don't know. Everyday Scientologists do not know that. And when I left, the further I got away from Scientology, the more I started learning from other people who came before me and bravely shared their stories, shared what they knew. And that includes Mike Rinder, Jeff Hawkins, Tori, Mark Bunker. I mean, so many. I could go on and on and on. And before them, there have been people exposing Scientology since day one. This goes back so far. This movement to expose Scientology has existed as long as Scientology has. But the truth is, we're growing faster than Scientology. Yet, still, there they are. They are shrinking. Their numbers are shrinking. They're not able to recruit in the ways they did before, but they really have mastered getting a lot of money, in large part through this ideal organization scam with buildings and their whole real estate scam. Let's see. Ooh, I fell behind in the chat. Okay, now let's take a look. Let's look at another clip. This is the one having to do with because again, Scientology, how they do one thing, they do them all. So their technique in following protesters to find out who they are, to harass them, they also employed to find out who the jurors were for the Danny Masterson trial. Take a look at this clip here.
Scientology did retaliate, with private investigators following protesters home and with some even infiltrating anonymous local groups. We've written in the past about Sierra Westerman, for example, who came forward and revealed that she had infiltrated Anonymous in Clearwater, Florida, in order to help Scientology dox other protesters. By the way, Scientology's documented history of doxing anonymous protesters by following them back to their cars is precisely why I said that is exactly what they did to the Danny Masterson jurors. That is how Scientology and Danny Masterson's defense team found out who all the jurors were. Okay, in Seattle, our source says that Russ Andrews was flown out to join local ID members of Anonymous there in April 2009. Scientology did retaliate, with private investigators following protesters home and with some even infiltrating anonymous local groups. We've written in the past about Sierra Westerman, for example, who came forward and revealed that she had infiltrated Anonymous in Clearwater, Florida.
So there's just basically this long history. It's the same thing of trying to find out, right? To trying to infiltrate and find out who people are and dox them. And I think that's part of what is throwing Scientology this round is many of us were over here like, here's my name. Here's who I am. Here is what I look like. And here is what I'm talking about. It's all very much being done out in the open and being done in ways like to have discussions around it, right? It's about exposing Scientology, but for me, it's also about understanding the mind control and what happened and how cults operate. Because I believe that if we can raise awareness about the pitfalls and how people fell for Scientology and how they get out or got out, we can also people will be better armed to recognize a cult or coercive control when it's happening to them. Marcy, thank you so much for gifting 5 Scientology Life After Occult memberships. Big aloha to Marcy. If you get one of those in the chat, give her a little shout out. Thank you. I appreciate that. Andrew B's all, hi, Osa. Here I am. Let's see. Oh, ES Gotcher. I never understood why grown men just take it from DM. I had a bully of a boss when I was 19, poking me in the chest one day, and let's say he didn't do it again. When you're in the Sea organization, everybody around David Miscavige is team David Miscavige. So a lot of times when he would go do this face ripping and stuff on people, he had people with him who would have his back if anything went south. My sister, in fact, just a couple weeks ago, some of you might have caught it. I did an interview with her on my channel, and she talked about being 14, 15 years old at the international base and witnessing David Miscavige going up to somebody and completely ripping into them while his main lieutenant, at the time, it was Marty Rathbun, Mike Rinder, and there was one other one. Was it Mark Yeager? I think that she said was there. Like, he doesn't go that I'm aware of when David Miscavige like rips face or is physically abusive with his staff. He's not doing it alone. He's not in that it's not just him and one other person in a room. There's a bunch of people. And if that one person were to fight back, they'd be jumped on immediately. Even though the people who would be jumping on the person fighting back had to know on some level it was wrong and it was not okay. A lot of that is part of the mind control and living in a state of being stuck in fight or flight. You don't know what's going to happen to you. You don't want to end up on the rehabilitation project force. You don't want anything to happen to your family members who could be in the Sea Org and be affected by a decision or a call that David Miscavige made. It wouldn't end well. I am not aware of one time when somebody stood up to David Miscavige when he was physically or emotionally and mentally abusing them that I'm aware of. I would love to hear it if there was, and there is, but not that I'm aware of. And a lot of it has to do with the fear and the mind control and the blinders that the other members have on. And you start thinking when you're abused enough for long enough, you start thinking you deserve it. Maybe they're thinking like, hey, of course, you know what? I shouldn't have messed up here. So yeah, I deserve it. I can remember my daughter Shelby having that mentality after I got her out of Clearwater and she was going through her own deprogramming. Because I would say, Shelby, depriving you of food is not okay. Having you work all night cleaning bathrooms as punishment for not making sales quotas when sales isn't even your job, you're supposed to be there training, is not okay. But she was so indoctrinated in the belief, like many of us were, that I deserve it. They're just helping me get my ethics in. I just need to be more tough. Think about people making it through, training, special forces. It's really hard, but it's not somebody's there like trying to drown you that I know of. You know what I'm saying? Somebody's not physically beating the crap out of you. And that's happening in the Sea organization. And that idea becomes twisted that it's somehow my fault through the victim blaming. And that is how I think it's gone so unchecked. Purely out of fear and an indoctrination to believe it's okay. L. Ron Hubbard was throwing people overboard and locking children in locked, what was it called? Where he locked kids on the ship that he was on. So day one, going back from day one, this type of behavior is part of it. It's considered acceptable. It toughens you up. That's the belief. It's all not true. It's all human rights violations anywhere, any way you look at it. All right, let's look at another clip here. Some more info.
Russ Andrews, the private investigator Scientologist, is someone that Scientology used to try and plant evidence against Danny Masterson's victims by, it's crazy how this worked. So remember, Russ Andrews is already a known insider black bag operator for Scientology, okay? He is one of the guys who's working with Danny Masterson's defense team and lawyers and investigators. And he turns over a box that he found in his garage. It was just a box. I was just going through a box. It was in my garage. It was in my storage. I don't know. I was going through it, and there's some things in here that I think might be of interest to you. The box just happened to have some OW write-ups that would only of one of the Jane Does that would only exist in their auditing files.
So OW write-up is a write-up of your overt and withholds, okay? And overt in Scientology, think of it like a sin. And withholds, sins that you've been withholding. So you write them up as part of what you do in Scientology, and it goes into your ethics file, or it could even be in your pre-clear folder for auditing, but it's supposed to be confidential. Confidential, locked away. It is a security issue for Scientology to keep these things secure. Yet here is Scientologist and private investigator married to the head of Citizens Commission on Human Rights International, finding a box of confession stuff written up by one of the Jane Does from the Danny Masterson trial in his garage in a box. Why would he have that? How would he get it? This guy's not just walking into a Scientology organ, going through things on his own and pulling them out. They're given to him. They're given to him. So this, of course, proves even further what we know to be fact is Scientology will take information that people use in their private counseling and use it against them if they leave or try to speak out against Scientology. That is exactly what Scientology did in this situation.
Or their ethics files. It's literally internal, protected, priest penitent, privileged information that would never be admissible in a court of law. And Russ Andrews is like, oh, gee, I just was cleaning out my garage this weekend, and you might find some interesting things in here. He gave that to the private investigator working for Danny Masterson's team, who then gave it to the LAPD, who then confronted one of the Jane Does with this information, and it eventually had to be admitted that the source of all of it was Russ frickin' Andrews.
That is amazing. In all of the worst ways. All of the worst ways. This is what Scientology does. Digs that stuff up and uses it against them. Everyday Scientologists do not know this. Do not know this. They don't think, because they're told their folder has a big stamp on it, how it's all, confidential. Only their auditor and people connecting to deliver the auditing can look at it, let alone give it to somebody to keep in his garage. I just don't know. I just cannot with that. That's just like, yeah, they're a cult. Exactly. Every day, all day. Every day, all day. Now let's take a look at what Aaron, growing up in Scientology, had to say about Confident Chris and what happened to him.
I'll tell you, the idea that CCHR and Russ Andrews and, secret cash payments could quite literally and very likely have been responsible for Confident Chris getting assaulted and put into the hospital while in the 2 minutes that it took him to walk from LRH Way back to his car. At first, you sound like a nutbag because it looks like it was just a homeless person who happened to hit him. But when you really understand how Scientology works, you understand the chance of that having been a coincidence is damn near zero. Okay. And they'd rather have a bunch of people 3 or 4 steps removed from Scientology, literal homeless people being bribed with cash to go do this and go do that. That is actually how Scientology works, guys.
Yes, indeed. And it's just continuing to come out and be exposed more and more and more. Buckled up Buttercup. Hate to tell them, it's not working. The YouTube channels are growing, mostly with people who are learning what a horror Scientology is for the first time. Well said, buckled up Buttercup. Well said. Timija, remember when Jessica was having her tires slashed night after night around the same time of Chris's assault? Yes, yes. I remember when I first started speaking out against Scientology, my tires were slashed. It was the same tire after a hang up call from a Scientologist. I go out to my vehicle, back left tire, flat. I still think nothing of it. In fact, I returned the call of the dropped call or the hang up call. That person did not pick up. I go and I get my car, I get my tire replaced. I'm still not thinking much. And there, yeah, it looks like somebody just went boom and punctured your tire. I'm like, okay, well, I got to get a new tire. I get a new tire. Within a week, the exact same tire, the new tire that I just replaced, exact same puncture into my tire. So I got a new tire. Now, is it the kind of thing Scientology does? Sure. It's stupid and juvenile. Part of it is just to try and upset you. And then, of course, you got to pay for a tire, and that kind of stuff is a pain in the butt. But it doesn't deter. I mean, maybe somebody it would deter. It just blows my mind that they think what they think will actually deter people, that we're not actually going to be even more excited about exposing Scientology and what this is. I mean, if they thought they could end Jessica Palmadessa with a slashed tire, it just shows you how not operating in the realm of reality that they actually are. They're living in this 1950s L. Ron Hubbard mentality of how things should be. Max says they still can't control the internet with their OT powers, though. So true. If you are cause over matter, energy, space, and time, why can't you handle this? Because it's not true. It's not true. What is true is Scientology is a human trafficking cult that violates the human rights of its members, of its Sea Org members, and has been doing so since day one. Now, Kate asks, was it anywhere near this bad when L. Ron Hubbard was alive? Oh, yes. Yes, it was. If not in ways worse. Google Paulette Cooper and Scientology and read what they did to her. She wasn't a Scientologist. She wrote a book. She was reporting on Scientology. And the lengths they went to try and stop her will tell you everything you need to know. In fact, let's not forget Scientology infiltrated 136 different government entities. This is when L. Ron Hubbard was around, hiding, no doubt. His own wife went to jail for it, went to prison. 11 Scientologists were sentenced to prison for this. There was one of the biggest raids the FBI ever did was on Scientology. And this is when L. Ron Hubbard was in charge. So, yeah, we all learn after we leave or as we leave just how bad it was and how bad it always has been. And I think one thing I want to do, in fact, this Thursday, I'm going to be doing an interview with somebody who's on the ship with L. Ron Hubbard. I want to share more stories too of people who were there more at the beginning so we can compare that to today and really take a look at, has Scientology changed? Are they doing things differently? Are they doing it the same? I think that would help people understand it more, but also be prepared on how to handle any fair gaming that might come your way. The biggest thing is, ignore it. The little stuff when they start with like the name calling or spreading rumors just don't take the bait, just don't take the bait because that's what they want you to do. And they'll often use other people to do that. They totally will. So let's see. I got that question there. I'm just still kind of reeling from this. I knew they did this kind of thing, but I was not thinking in the ways of like how they're using the Citizens Commission on Human Rights. That is a game changer. That is now out and known about, and we can get the word out about this, that this is what they're doing, that this is how they're using the Citizens Commission on Human Rights. What are they going to do? I guess they might try and start a new one. I don't know. Like a new crazy front group. The Guardian's office existed years ago when the FBI raid happened. And what did Scientology do? We disbanded the Guardian's office. We disbanded it. We got rid of those bad apples. No, you rebranded is what you did. You now call it the Office of Special Affairs. You move some people around. Some of your people went to jail and they're still doing dirty work for Scientology. Mock, yes, don't dignify their nonsense with a response. Exactly. Be amused by it and move on. Oh, thank you, Nancy. Look at that. That's so cute. Are those sunglasses? I love that. Like. Yep, everybody hit that like button. Please do. And check your subscribe check your subscribe as well. Lisa Pete says they use that org to take away other human rights. Yeah. Absolutely, they do. Kate Murphy, I'm glad you're here. Reading while listening. Aw, thank you, Nancy. She said it was for my grandma. The sunglasses. For you might not know, but my grandma, my Hawaiian grandma, held the Guinness Book World Record for the largest private collection of novelty sunglasses in 2017. I've got some of her sunglasses. Shelly, exactly. A repackaged turd is still a turd. And Scientology has been doing this since the beginning. Rebranding, repackaging, making it look different. It's the same shit on a different day. Repackaging and rebranding Office of Special Affairs. We didn't even wake you up today. That's just like how much I was dying to talk about this. I'm just assuming you're already up. Got to hit the ground running. What a beautiful gift for the holidays at this time of year. I'm feeling, I don't know about you guys, but it's very much making me happy. I want to show you guys something else here. Mary Jane, though, says, it really makes so much more sense why LAPD behaves the way they do. I can only imagine how many individual cops were offered money to turn a head. Yes. Yes. It all kind of nicely comes together there. And, the more we know about this and how Scientology works, the more we can also help each other. When you recognize, when you see something, you can obviously tell when something's being said just to create some drama. Recognize it and ignore it. But if you engage in it, you're only furthering. You hear some of us say, and Tori says this often, she doesn't want to do the job of the Office of Special Affairs. Forwarding these enemy lines planted by Scientology is all part of it. It's like you're doing their job. Do not take the bait. Let's see. Okay, so I want to show you guys something that I saw that just made me super happy. I love this. I've watched it a million times. Some of you probably have as well, and I thought it's just perfect because it's the holidays here. Did you guys see that little girl who was at her school's program and she started to spill the tea a little bit? This little girl is my spirit animal. I love this. Watch this.
I am very proud of myself and all of my other friends inside my class. And my class is really sweet, except one little boy. And I need to tell you.
That's my favorite.
Oh my gosh. I love that little girl. The best part is when she's like, I need to tell you. And then it's whoop. They just take that microphone right away. Talk about spunk. I mean, that girl, I cannot wait to see, which I don't know if we'll see it, probably not, but what she grows up to do, because that was some serious spunk there. And I love that she felt like, especially little kids like that, they're so much more just kind of in the moment. But this girl had a mission. She was like, okay, I love my class. Everybody here is so amazing, except this one little boy. And the way she delivers the line too, one little boy. And then the principal, I mean, I don't know. I'd have let it play it out myself because I'd have been like, I want to hear this. but I get why she took the microphone away. Mock says, can't tame a curly redhead. No, no, you cannot. You cannot. Oh my gosh, it was so funny. Kayla, right? Let her finish talking. I know. I wanted to know. I wanted to know. Nicola, so funny. Lisa says, yeah, I love that kid. Joe says she probably heard her mom speak of the little boy like that. Maybe, maybe. I feel like she had her own experience and was just about to tell it like it is. I just love it. I'm checking out your guys' comments on this. I love it. Maybe his name was David. Well, let's not give all Davids a bad name because Dave, you know, Miscavige back there is such a butthole. That is the official name. I'm sure that's what he will eventually be charged with, is the crime of being a butthole. Old Fred says, love that kid. Exactly. A cute pumpkin clodhopper. What did the little boy do? I want to know. What did you do to get on this girl's radar? Where she's like, look, we're all pulling together and creating community here. This one, though, is like out of pocket here and causing trouble. Mary James, yes, she was so close to naming names. And I need to tell you, Rip. I know, I want to know. I am hoping somebody has her on some national show, Good Morning America, whatever, and finds out. Like, I hope somebody has the guts to let the girl speak. She doesn't need to say who it is even, but what happened? What happened that's where you were at on it? George Massey says she walked away with a swagger like a boss. Oh yeah, that girl just skipped off there. She was such a mic drop, even though the mic was taken away from her. Miss Sunrise Dawn says, I have a feeling that could very well have been my 5-year-old daughter. Hubby passed gas yesterday and she yelled, Daddy, you stinky thing. Fuzzy Pink Handcuffs, her for president 2064. Yes, I love that idea. Oh, that was so great and so perfect for the holidays. I'm going to go to my sister's house later today. We're going to do our Christmas thing there. And yeah, I'm really trying to focus on, it's going to be fun to spend time with my grandkids and my children and my family and Tony's boys. But 3/4 of me just wants to fast forward through all of it and get to January 2nd. But I'm doing my best to just try and be in the moment and appreciate, you know, what we have and the beauty of things, even with the struggle of Tony not being here. Oh, damn it. But you guys know, you all know. So this is the first Christmas without him. It's been the first Thanksgiving. It'll be the first New Year's. And I am proud of myself for making it this far. Honestly, this has been so far, and I'm 6.5 months in from when he died, but I'm still processing so much of what happened the 2.5 years leading up to him dying, when he became sick and sicker. So that's why I think I want to just fast forward through these holidays. But I'm also trying not to do that because I need to feel my emotions and process it. And I'm trying to do that. It's so interesting to have such a, you know, that dichotomy of something that I always found so beautiful, the holidays and the magic of it. And that's still there. But at the same time, this other half of me is like, I don't want to do it. You know, I'd rather just get back in bed and then just wake up when it's January 2nd. But that's also no way of dealing with it. So I'm doing my best to still find that joy and that happiness and that magic of the holidays and not, you know, not let it all be gone, while also still working through my grief. And there's been a lot. I mean, since about mid-November, a lot of processing this and going through it. And so, I mean, I know a lot of times when I show up to do the recap, my goal is always to do it. It helps me to do it. You guys know I love exposing Scientology, but being here with you and that energy and doing it in the way that I do really helps me kind of like set the pace of my day. It really helps me. It has been so helpful to me to come out here on YouTube and do what I do while going through everything. Some might think, wow, because some people were like, well, should you like back away, take some time? No, it's not how I handle things. I just, what do I need to do? If I have to experience it, process it, I want to do it in a way that is going to result in a healthier Natalie in the future. I'm trying to do things today for future Natalie, to have future Natalie more set up. And that means going through it and experiencing the... It's crazy that it's even hard to say. Experience the loss, the pain of it, because it has really been, and many of you who are familiar with me and my story growing up and all that, you know, like I've been through a lot in my life, but this is probably the most painful thing I've ever gone through. And it's been going on for almost 3 years, and it's going to continue. And that's okay, because I do need to work through it. I don't want to push it aside. I'm not going to pretend it's not happening. I do appreciate my time with you and being able to like get through it and not cry every single time I'm doing a video. That would suck. That would make me not want to do it. But I appreciate so many of you being here and supporting me through it, continuing to show up, sharing my videos, and your beautiful supportive comments, and the way so many of you remember Tony as well. Lisa, thank you so much for the super chat. The other day I called a few orgs, wished them Merry Christmas, wished me the same. Then I asked, do you believe in Christ? No. Why then do you use it to forward your agenda and recruit? Crickets. That's funny, Lisa. You know, part of it, you know what? Give me a minute. I'm going to blow my nose here, you guys. I'll be right back. Okay. Part of why they do that is with using, you know, Merry Christmas is a commercial holiday for Scientology. That's pretty much what it is. It's not about the true meaning of the holiday having to do with Jesus. It's not. It's a commercial holiday in Scientology. And so they just say it because it's just something to say. That's what they're, you know, it's what they're used to saying. Mock says you can cry and laugh. And I do a lot. I feel like there's so much of that. Kayla says, and you just doing your best is good enough. And I'm learning that too. Like, hey, it's, and sometimes it's not even my best, and it's still going to have to be good enough, because it's all I have to give for whatever it is. And I got to tell you, as a former Scientologist and a former Sea Org member, dropping balls and trying to be okay with it, being okay with it, and not killing myself to get certain things done is huge. Like, for me, that's where I need a lot of growth. I am really good at persisting. I'm really good at surviving. I'm really good at pushing through. What I'm not as good at, what I'm trying to do, is just letting it take the natural time that it needs. And you guys are good at that. Many of you are. Robin Miners, thank you so much for the super chat. Crying is part of the process. We are here for virtual hugs. Have a beautiful holiday. I appreciate that so much. And I take all of the virtual hugs and aloha and love that you guys give me. George Massey says, my wife's birthday was December 28th and her death December 30th. So this week last year was extra hard to confront. I hear you, George. I am so sorry. I appreciate that, which might sound weird to say, but I appreciate that people who have suffered a loss or are going through a loss, that you can be here and we're kind of doing it together. It doesn't feel like I'm going through it alone. And I hope that those of you who've experienced a loss or the holidays, if it's tough for you, that you're not alone in that either. You're not. Dawn, thank you. Sending love and strength this holiday season. Natalie, we love you. I appreciate that so much. Old Fritz says, Natalie, your grandchildren will see you through it. They're what keeps me going through Christmas. Gotta fake it till you make it, just for their sakes. Yeah, we are gonna have fun. We are gonna have fun. Irina, good to see you. You know best what you need emotionally. I'm learning what that is. I feel like I don't know. I've not known, but I'm figuring it out what that is, because what I think I need, I don't know. It's again, it's those habits of so many years of working the way that I did and, pushing through things is kind of my default. And I'm fighting that. I want to process it. I want to feel it. I mean, I don't, but I do. I also feel that it's by processing the grief, it honors Tony. It's a huge loss for my entire family and myself. And I think that's part of it, is knowing that I am not the only one going through this. It's my whole family. It's his children. It's many of you. It's our friends. So many of you got to know Tony here on YouTube, and it's a loss for you as well. And on top of everything else you already have going on. And I appreciate you being here so much and your kind words and being supportive. It is what's getting me through this. It continues to be, and it has been. And Tony called it. He said he pushed so hard to really build a community. And he kept saying, these are the people that you're going to lean on. It's on this channel will help get you through. And it's been true. Lisa says, Merry Christmas and big hugs this holiday to you. Look for cardinals visiting. Bet your Tony will be right there. I appreciate that, Lisa. And I appreciate you being a member for 9 crazy months. Bob, it'll be okay. Yep. It will. It will. This is all part of the process. And I'm really trying to normalize grief for me. Normalize it for me. It might be very normal for most people, but I'm trying to normalize it. Crazy how much work that seems to take, but I think that is the way to go. So, Robin Miners, thank you. I actually can't remember if I read this or not. Crying is part of the process. Yes, I did. Okay. Thank you, Robin. Irina says, and Irina is a former Scientologist. Scientology cares about Christmas as much as effing McDonald's does, except that a lot of McDonald's employees are actually Christians. Yeah. I don't doubt that. Don says, Tony's always by your side. He's your angel now and feeling no more pain. I think about that a lot. When it gets hard is that he's not feeling any more pain. And he was in so much pain for such a long time, and it just got worse. But he kept showing up for me. I'm like, what is that on? Is that a shadow? He kept showing up for me and for his kids and for other people. So I appreciate that. All right, you guys, I'm going to go back and catch up on the comments after the live stream so I can see them all. I appreciate you all so much. I will continue to say it over and over and over again. All of you, everybody in this community who shows up each day to, hear what I got to say about Scientology and other things, my life after a cult. I appreciate it. I'm going to go through and read your comments. Hit that like. Please check your subscribe. And I will talk to you guys later. I hope you all have an absolutely amazing cult-free holiday.